Hi, Dev. It's really great to see you. Last time I saw you, you were picking up an award, so it's great to see you again here. And very pleased that you haven't got too big to appear on podcasts like ours now, with all these awards that you're amassing. I know that you've achieved a lot, from co-founding your company to creating the world's first publicly available AI teacher. But I want to roll back a little bit. I'd love to know just a little bit about you. When did your interest in AI start? Tell me a bit about your journey.
Thank you. So, absolutely, it's a privilege to be here. As you said, it was great to meet you at that event. Luckily, I won, and here we are. A couple of weeks later. So it's absolutely fantastic. Um, the question you're actually starting with is interesting, even interesting to me when I look back, right? So let me just explain. My first degree was in law. Okay. I have a saying that at the age of 18, I don't think people actually figure out what they want to do, but law sounded good, right? So, and I was good enough to get into law, started law, whatever. And then I was at Brunel University, London. I actually learned a lot at the university, everything outside of academics. So I've always been a bright student, but I've always been the exploring type. And in this process, I also said I want to stand for the student elections. I stood for the student elections. That's where I met Poldi. She was the president. I was the vice president. And for the listeners, Dr. Poldi is my co-founder. And after we finished our role, so during our role, we were very successful. We raised about or secured about 480,000 pounds for students. Always, looking at these kind of stuff. Then we decided, let's, travel to South Asia. And as part of our travels, we said we're going to teach some very marginalized schools, right? So we went there, Nepal first, Bangladesh, India. One of the schools I still remember, it was at the boundary of a national park. We were, given sort of rooms in a thatched kind of tin house kind of thing. So in the morning, when we were going, Polly actually saw something, lying under the sun, if I remember correctly. And I thought it was a deer, but it was actually a leopard who had eaten. So, like leopards rest after eating, right? So it was that sort of deep or last mile that we went. And that's when we found that there is a need, right? There is a need. And the first thing that we actually discovered was there was a need for soft skills and employability skills training, because all of these schools, uh, you know, based on whatever quality of education they are getting, they were all pushing towards the hard skills, right? The higher you go, you kill everything else, you just do rote learning. So we created a sort of report on that, and we actually had our first MOU from a government in India, Uttarakhand government, before we registered the company. And then we were like, okay, we need to register this company, right? So we registered the company. We went to launch the program. We registered the company 2 weeks before the pandemic started. So we went to launch the program. I got stuck in India. Anyway, that's a long story. But the point is, we had to then, within a couple of weeks, make everything digital because we had to serve these learners. Word got out, and then suddenly you had people from 9 countries reaching out to us. We started serving UNICEF, even the UK government, and then suddenly we had 35,000 people we were serving during the pandemic. How did we do that? We didn't have enough trainers. Luckily, a lot of the school teachers, academics were also sitting at home. They were volunteering, but we figured out 35,000 people teaching is not, it's just not scalable. And by that time, what we found out was just giving content out has a very clear plateau. Okay. At one point, it stops. There is no more impact after that. So teaching was the main thing. So then we said, let's try and create a digital teacher. How can we do that? It cannot be standard software, artificial intelligence, right? Let's try that. And then we tried it. Like, obviously, she's a PhD. She knows her coding. I've always been interested in AI, etc. But we tried it. And the first lesson we created had about 12,500 question and answers, which we had to write. Okay. So we did that. It worked. Then we made it a bit bigger. And the first time it was publicly launched was in January 2021. for UNHCR BCF camps in northern Iraq. And I still remember my first student's name. Her name is Aisha, right? So she was interacting with this teacher, and her first reaction was, she speaks to me, because our avatar was also female, right? So that's what showed us the value of what we do. And since then, we are in version 3, 3.5 of our product. We're in 19 countries. And the biggest thing today is that we are now able to run our AI offline. I'm sure we're going to touch on that, so I won't, talk too much about it. But the interesting part of my journey then is, after I did all of this, then I got into a PhD with Brunel University London on AI. I was one of the top 50 students in the world. I also got into the Alan Turing Institute for a role that's normally for extreme late stage or post PhD students. So that's what's really interesting, because most people who I, let's say, who I can consider as colleagues or who I compete with, would have done a PhD and then started all of this. Mine is the opposite, right? So it's essentially in the hunt for impact, trying to figure out how can we create difference, what could work, and then that really getting us into AI, rather than, doing a PhD and then thinking, okay, I'm going to use it and see where it fits.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. I think there's lots of lessons in there. The first is actually you maybe don't know that you're going to get into AI before you do. It's the tool that provides a solution to a problem that you identified in this situation. But also, you can accelerate through AI very quickly as well. A lot of people may have, in the same situation, given up and said, pandemic, it's all over. You pivoted and changed the way you did things. But maybe there's also a lesson about having a great partner as well in business or in life, because that can really help. And a lot of people are struggling on their own. So it was great that you seem to have a like-minded person in Paldi to be on this journey together. Thank
Mm.
you. Thank you so much for sharing that.
I
Leah.
immediately picked up on the fact that you studied law.
Mhm.
Um, I was speaking to someone a little while ago, and we were saying how humanities is the basis of AI, and it really is one of the building blocks. I know law technically isn't in the humanities, but it definitely is quite close in terms of in where it is in schools. I know at my university, law was in the humanities school with me.
Now,
Um,
I'll give you a fun fact there. Actually, if I really go academics for academics' sake, my favorite subject is English literature. I, I
yeah,
got into literature in Durham. I just chose to do law. Durham didn't give me law. Brunel gave me, so it was clearing, right? So
yeah.
that's the story. But yeah, I am a very much a humanities person originally.
And I really do think that if you strip AI all the way back, at the basis of it, it's a language, it's humanities.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I found the your quick digitalization during COVID also really, really interesting. I think that things like that are sent to test you, and sometimes it's what needs to happen for you to excel in such incredible ways. I am honestly taken aback by how you've pushed the boundaries of what AI can do. Obviously, OIAI has upskilled tens of thousands of learners across 4 continents, which is unbelievable. Like, it's remarkable. But I was wondering how you balance the global scale of your work with ensuring cultural and contextual sensitivity in the learning experience as well, because as we know, what you put in is what you put out, is what you get out with AI.
Lots of points there, but very interesting points, right? I'm going to start from the back and then try and work my way up. So it's way more than tens of thousands of students now. Just in Kenya, 0 to 200,000 students from August. Okay, so it's really scaling. Why it's scaling is, at our heart, see, we work with private schools in the UK, okay, but we focus on SEND students because we are all about marginalized, right? We work in the US, and in the middle, we couldn't go back to Africa, etc., a lot, because even though we had the AI teacher, which people found cool, the primary problem was the internet. Okay. And then the hardware. So our AI also works in a 4 GB RAM phone. Right. So that's what we've done. Between August and now, we've dropped our app size by 50%. So all of these things we're looking at to go back to the marginalized. And actually, since after the award, we've signed with the government of Burundi to upskill 1 million learners, right? So at that time, it was happening. And the point here is this. With Burundi, even with the pandemic, they never really got into digital education. Because even if you give them free Coursera or YouTube, it's just too much, internet bottlenecks, or the data is too high in terms of its cost. So here, not only are we helping them leapfrog into AI, we're actually bringing them into digital education, right? So that's sort of the focus point that we have in terms of what we do. From a cultural and context standpoint, that's a journey that we are on. We don't have all of the solutions, but we are looking at it very actively. So, example, some of the things that we do, every country we launch, at least the surface layer is culturally and contextually tuned. So, example, in Kenya, our teachers are called Eric and Salma, representing the main sort of demographics there. Every time our avatars are made to look like these learners, we have Sri Lankan avatars, for instance, we've just launched there with the president. We use certain words like, sawa, karibu, etc., just to give that flavor. Can we go deeper than that? Yes. Will we go deeper than that? Yes. But it's going to be a little bit of a journey, because if you actually look at the AI data landscape as well, as of December last year, so 11 and a half months ago, only 4% of the data that was used to train frontier models came from Africa, right? So it's the Wikipedia problem all over again. So there is a lot more that we need to do, which we can because we have the data flywheel, but there is a lot more that has to come from the sector. But that journey is on. And the last thing is, again, we, by our core definition, always teach according to what is needed. So I'll give you the biggest example, you'll get it. When we teach Burundi, we will teach the national curricula of Burundi. We are not going to teach the UK curricula there, right? So we are, trying to be as contextually and culturally relevant as possible. But this is a journey. But I'm sure by the time we are done with it, we will be at the forefront, especially in the global south.
Yeah, it really is. But I think it's brilliant what you're doing to stop the digital divide, and also like close the gap on digital poverty that we're seeing globally as well, at least to try and level the playing field. I also love the fact that you have different avatars. A familiar face is usually one that you can bond with at least a little bit more, and you can get a bit more from. So yeah, so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me of I think it's Chimanzi's TED talk, where she talks about reading books when she was young about snow and England, and the names and John and whoever, and it was like, this is not relatable. And growing up like that, and actually with AI, no one has to have that experience anymore. That personalization aspect is so key that you're able to achieve. And I love the way you're dealing, it's not small fry. We're dealing with whole countries, whole space, whole continents here, when you're, rolling out what you're doing. So it's amazing that you've been able to be so strategic and work at this global scale, actually, from something that started just before the pandemic, which really wasn't that long ago. So we talked a little bit about education, and I know you're doing some work, my understanding, with, you've talked about people with special educational needs, and I know you're doing some work with people with hearing impairments. And I wonder what, we're talking about AI and bias and things like that a little bit, but what does fairness in education mean to you? Yeah, you started off with the story of seeing young people who needed not education by rote, but they needed more of the what we call soft skills, but the most important skills, actually, things that AI can't do. And I'm kind of curious about, what does the fairness in education mean, when you're thinking about what you're doing? Yeah, I'd love to know more about that.
Very interesting question. See, there is various different sort of lenses that we look at this with. There is no one answer to this. Okay, if I have to really choose a couple of words, let's just start with the words that most people resonate with. I think access is probably our primary North Star. That is why, it's not about the AI teacher. Okay, let's start with the AI teacher. The point was access before us, because we are before Khanmigo as well, right? So access before us equal to you could access content that was made anywhere in the world. So you could watch a YouTube or Coursera, but you could not have a teacher, okay? And you couldn't get teaching support. And actually, if you look at it, if you just zoom out for a minute, from the time we've had modern education, the private tutor also has always been only in the domain of the privileged, right? So we always started with the access standpoint. That led us to the offline point, because we said we can't go back to where the access is needed most. Now we need to go offline because we can't build cell towers there, right? So again, it's from a access standpoint. But then the second layer to that would be the inclusivity standpoint, right? And they go hand in hand, because to be inclusive, you need to be accessible as well. In this journey, and from the marginalized lens, we were looking at the SEND learner space, because actually this is, in most contexts, this is what happens. If you are a neurodivergent student, I'm a dyslexic, for instance, let's say somebody's ADHD, whatever else, you should be studying the same content. What you require is differentiated support, right? So for instance, you might need to read differently, or your pace is different. You might need a break every 15 minutes, what have you. So what we've done is we've worked with Cavendish Education, one of the premier groups in the UK, to figure this out. And we've till now added 14 layers on top of our existing teachers. So now, if you require dyslexia font, it's in dyslexia font, the tone changes, the background becomes matte green, whatever else is required to give you that differentiated support. And these are things that we will keep adding. Now, everything is good. The sort of sad news is the hearing impaired one is a project. That's also my PhD project, which is the same AI teacher does British Sign Language, right? It's parked at the moment a little bit, because the reason for that is lack of enough data. So we'll figure that one out, but we're looking at that. And I don't know if you are aware of this, but also for the audience, once I got into this sort of area, I also figured out there are 300 sign languages in the world. So that's going to be another marathon, right? But yeah.
Yeah, I've actually had that delivering training myself, where it's about getting the right sign language. So you've got a signer in, but it's not the right sign, not the right language for the person in the room. So it doesn't actually help them. So yeah, I think that's an education point, and that shows how little often we know, because we haven't had that lived experience. We don't realize the nuance. Um, I think for our listeners, it would be good to understand a little bit more about this idea of using AI without the internet. You know, the big thing that one of the many big things that people are talking about is the effect on the environment and the data centers and etc. and how much energy AI uses. And I'm guessing if it doesn't need the internet, maybe it doesn't use so much energy. So this could really help that problem. But I'd like to understand it more. And when we met at the event, that was one of the questions. I was actually talking about you all before you appeared, and the person wanted to know, how does it work? So you might not want to give us all of your trade secrets, but a little bit more insight into it would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think why it's important is more important, but I'll just start with essentially what this means. Essentially what this means is, let's say you download our app, right? The app comes with the entire AI model in it, which then means your phone becomes the server. Okay. So all the compute happens on your phone. Now, how on earth did we make it so small? That's a trade secret. And it's just not about making small, it's also a lot of engineering. So you could have the same engine, for instance, and something switches on and something switches off at the right time, so that the same power can do multiple things. That's essentially what we've done over 15 months. But why is it important? Apart from access, because it started with access, right? But why is it important? It is important because, first of all, let's keep green at the end of this. Okay, the first point is privacy. When we are talking to vulnerable groups, right? When we're talking to, we're in refugee centers or first-time digital access or what have you, you need to be very careful about private data. Now, we can say anything about our cloud security, but in this case, private data does not need to leave the device. So we can take the aggregated data, but it doesn't need to leave the device. You also know Dr. Poldy, her baby, for children, she's also looking at Teddy AI, which is using this technology of mine, which is, again, for children, 5-year-old children, you don't want that data to go out, right? So privacy matters there. If you move forward, if you think about the, EU AI, act and the changes that's coming to the data policies, and also what people are actually thinking about here, we are also entering a realm of what we call private AI, right? I want the power of AI. I want AI to be able to tell me what to do today, configure my calendar, etc. But I want it to be private. I don't want it to be with OpenAI, right? So that's again where our technology can come in. Another byproduct is when you are running it on the phone, you're 80 to 90% less carbon emitting than you are on the data center. Every time you ask something to ChatGPT, it goes up to the cloud, right? It goes to the data center and out comes a puff of carbon, right? If you want to visualize it in that way, that doesn't happen. Of course, it burns some more electricity than the phone would normally do, but it's really very different. The shortcoming is it cannot use humongous models. You still have the boundary of the hardware. But I think for most things today, you don't need a GPT-5. It's like driving a Ferrari to your local Tesco, right? Not even a Waitrose. So in that way, if you have that lens on, a lot of these kind of things can be done offline.
Yeah, I think that that's amazing. 80 to 90% less carbon. That's crazy. I think that if all AI could be like that, maybe there wouldn't be so many people that were against it, because I do think the environmental reasons that people dislike AI are incredibly valid and understandable. But this offline is brilliant. I heard you touch a little bit on Teddy AI then. I was wondering if for our listeners you could give a bit more in detail about what it is, because I've read about it and I was I'm pretty really impressed, as I am with all of your work.
Yes. So Teddy AI, thank you so much, it started as a personal project of Dr. Poldy and then it came out. Essentially, it was for 4 to 7-year-olds, right? From the same point of view, you need that teaching support, etc. But it has other layers, like the parents can see the exact conversations the children are having. For instance, they have full visibility and all of those things. But the reason it was built was to, introduce AI and fun learning with limitless possibility in a very safe manner, so offline manner. That's where Teddy AI came out from. It is launched, but it's in very early beta. The reason for that is we are taking it slow. It's for children, right? It's been there for a year already. We've got about 9,000 users already, and it's really picking up in terms of a lot of the feedback and support that we're getting. And if anybody wants to try it and give us some more feedback, because from January we're going hard at it, please download it. It's Steady AI on Android. So any Google Play Store sort of device, you can download it.
Yeah, if 9,000 users is slow, I have no clue what anything else would be. Wow, 9,000 users, it's incredible. I really love the basis of this company. I don't think that there are many education tools for children now that are actually aimed at nourishing rather than just giving them loads of bright colors and expecting them to learn from it. I was wondering what you've learned from working on this product about how children actually interact with us and how they actually trust AI as well. I think, we talk a lot about adults, but they're the ones that are going to be using it in their day-to-day lives more than we do.
We can have a series of podcasts on this question, right? But let me give you a few points which I think matters, right? First of all, they are more digitally native than we've ever been. So they get it. If you just hand Teddy AI to a child who's touched some kind of app before, they understand the mic and start talking. and make Teddy do stuff, right? If I do that with a 16-year-old in Africa or a 40-year-old here, I need to educate them. That's the difference. Okay. But I'll tell you some other interesting parts here. Teddy AI also has another feature where a parent can prompt Teddy and the child doesn't know. So example, if the child does not like brushing their teeth, Teddy will say, hey, let's brush our teeth together. And guess what happens? The child does it because it's a friend. It's not the parent saying it, right? So those kind of things we've embedded because these are also struggle points for parents. But coming back to your point, I think the listeners may look at it from either side of the coin. The example I give you is fun, but I think that's also a signal of non-human intelligence and human intelligence linkages as we look at the next decade and the next 2 decades, because you can literally see it. That kind of connection is very much visible already, and it's just not for those kind of things. It's also the amount. I'll give you another example, right? For instance, if a child is bullied, they may say that to Teddy before the parent. Of course, the parent gets to know because we have the dashboard, which the child doesn't know about, right? But that's I think the key differentiator here. That connection piece between human and non-human intelligence, you can really see it in action.
Yeah, I mean, as I listen as a parent, I think there's probably a lot of education that you need to do with parents. Oh, you hear your child's being bullied. What do? Don't rush in and make it clear that you are surveilling them in some way, because then they're never going to speak to Teddy again, and all of that sort of thing. So it feels like there's a addition that Teddy can do a bit of parenting support as well. I think in that process.
Yeah, and I'll just add one last point here, which is also, again, this was not by design, and we made this before starting our SEND work. But Teddy is absolutely fantastic in terms of the engagement with a lot of children who are in the autistic spectrum, right? It just works fantastically in that way. And probably the only other point here that I will add, from the parenting aspect of Teddy, I think the other way of looking at it is also trying to figure out how that works, because that could actually be the beginning of new kind of parenting. Because as you're looking at parenting over the next 10 to 20 years, whether it's Teddy or whatever else, you've got this entire area of parenting hardware and parenting software that's coming in, right? So that's again in that direction.
Yeah, I think that's a whole another PhD for you. Because I can just tell you, it's opening up so much in my mind about different aspects of parenting and what you've talked about: privacy, trust, where how we parent. Do parents know enough? That interaction between AI and parenting is just it's a minefield, actually. And then the psychological impact of all of that on all of us. So yeah. Fascinating, really fascinating. I think this is one that we're going to get a lot of feedback on from our viewers, actually. It's going to be really interesting to see what they say. So a final question from my perspective. You're so passionate about building consumer-facing AI products too. That's really coming through. As AI becomes more integrated into everyday life, and for many people it is anyway, we're just not aware of it. How do you think we can continue to nurture curiosity and confidence in our engagement with AI rather than fear for the next generation of learners?
That's a very interesting question. I'm just going to start with one thing, just for the listeners, because obviously, this is a very short conversation. We are actually 6 layers into AI. We are a vertical company. I'll just give you one, you'll understand. When we go into a country like Burundi, right, we're just not the consumer layer. We are their infrastructure layer, because that's the only thing that's enabling that to happen, and we can then stack up other consumer things on top of us. And it's just Burundi as an example, but we actively look at those sectors, and we have just partnered with, for instance, AfriFund Capital, which is a big investment bank in Africa centered, right, to look at these kind of stuff. So we are we just don't make the chips, right, but from above that we look at all of the layers, which has been a very difficult journey. But from a curiosity standpoint, I think the Short answer is between now and 2035, the primary thing that anybody should do and encourage others to do is use as much AI as possible, right? Because things are changing. If I'm really making a course on what's the best AI for X, if I'm a slow writer, by the time I've published it, it's already old, right? So you keep, be inquisitive yourself and pass on the inquisitiveness, the will to learn. People need to understand that lifelong learning is more important than ever before today, right? That's that piece. The other one, which is a little bit dark, but let's have that candid conversation. The telegram, right? Alexander Graham Bell, the phone. The year was 1991 when I was born. That was the first year. The first text message was sent from the UK, right? Last year, UK was at the bottom for data in the global north, which is a problem, right? AI's birthplace, Alan Turing Institute, where I have had the privilege of working, is also from the UK, right? So when we are looking at only the negatives of AI, it is impacting our position in AI in the world, because you're having a brain drain. People are going into, apart from the more money in the US and less money here, those are different problems. But if your sort of attitude is thinking more about the fears of AI, it's going to have other impact, which is downward hill. It's not uphill. Places like, a lot of Africa, a lot of Asia, for them, it is a white canvas. It's a leapfrog moment. So Vietnam never really had landline phones. They went straight to the mobile phone, right? So that's what they are capitalizing on. So be inquisitive, lifelong learning. Otherwise, you will be left behind in some shape or form, because AI is everything now. It's like an internet. It's like an electricity. It's not one directional. But more importantly, think about your own sort of immediate community and society as well, because you're also holding everybody back, because you are leading it. So it's one of those deeper things we should think about, right from government to our communities to individually.
Thank you. Really, really helpful answer to get everyone thinking.
Sorry. I feel like I have learnt so much. This episode, I feel like I could keep talking to you for ages. I think it's really, really interesting hearing more about, like, I guess generational differences, but also the layers of infrastructure, AI infrastructure as well. I think that's so interesting. I I'm going to move on now to our quick fire round.
Yep.
This is one of my favorite rounds because I think it's just fun, and I feel like we always hear something that is like a little bit fun or funny. So, what is one word that defines the future of learning?
Growth.
Yeah, nice. Who or what inspires you most in the AI world right now?
Creating new things.
Nice. And if your AI teacher could teach you one new skill today, what would it be?
Dealing with problems.
Yeah. I feel that as well. So thank you so much for today. It's been so insightful and so interesting, and it's really great to hear about work that isn't just forwarding AI, but is also doing things to develop the next generation and help develop the infrastructure in other countries as well. Yeah, it's nice. It's very community minded.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we look forward to seeing it everywhere because it almost is already. So we look forward to your exponential growth continuing and the positive difference that you make in the world. Thank you. It's been awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And also, very happy holidays to all of you.
Yeah, happy holidays. Thanks for listening to AI for Equity. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Stay curious, stay bold, and keep using AI to build a fairer future.